All right, Loctite and lubrication. How much and where? That's probably the most common thing I see is people put way too much Loctite on their knives. I like to Loctite my knives. Some people don't. But Loctite, it's called thread locker. Loctite is just a brand name. So that's brand name Loctite. You buy it on Amazon, you get this sweet little for sale in India only thing. But yeah, Loctite's made in India. Permatex is another good brand. Purple is low strength. You usually can't pick this up at like your local hardware store. You usually got to order it online. Blue is medium strength. You should absolutely never, ever, ever use red. You should honestly really just be using purple. It's for everything under 1/4 of an inch, but most people use blue on the pivot. I also use blue on the pivot. Another good Loctite is this Vibratite, which is a little bit different. I don't really use it anymore for the reasons I'll explain, but you know, as a user, you might like this better. So essentially what this is you apply it to your threads and you let it dry, and it turns it into like this. Essentially it becomes like a nylock screw. So with this type of thread locker, you apply it to your screw and then you have to let it dry for like 30 minutes, which is the reason why I don't really use it, because when you're doing a bunch of stuff, you know, letting all your screws dry for 30 minutes adds up pretty quick. So with the smaller ones, you could also thin it down a little bit to help make it easier to apply. But the benefit of this stuff, it's adjustable. So if you do your pivot and then it's a little too tight later on, you decide you want to, loosen it up a little bit. It's still in there. It's not a permanent bond. It's a gummy bond. So that way it gives you a couple times to adjust it before, it stops working. Where Loctite, it's, and it dries hard, it stays in that position. And even if you make the slightest adjustment, you break that bond, and you should take the screw out, clean it, apply new Loctite, put it back together. The other thing about Loctite is in order for it to dry, it needs to have metal on metal contact and no air. So if you have it spilled on the table, you'll notice it never dries up. That's why it never dries up when it's on the bottle, in the bottles. It only dries metal on metal contact with no air. So I think a lot of people have problems with Loctite not holding, so they think more is better, and that's how they end up putting too much Loctite on. But what reality is happening is they got oil or something on their threads, so they're not getting that metal to metal contact, and their Loctite never sets. So if you ever have a problem with Loctite not holding, it's probably because you got finger juice on your threads. So if you really wanted to be good about it, you could wear gloves and stuff like that, or you could just, let everything soak in acetone before you start assembly. Volume, right? If you put too much Loctite in here and it squeezes out, it gets in your bearings, or it's never going to come apart again because you put way too much Loctite, you don't need a lot of Loctite. Like, think about how much volume is in every single thread. It's tiny. These are tiny little threads, and they fit super tight in these tiny little threads. So you do not need a ton of Loctite at all. And the bond does not have to be super strong. You're basically just keeping it from vibrating out. So what I like to do is I just get a piece of tape, 2 toothpicks. That's another thing, you gotta shake your Loctite too. 1 drop of each type that I'm going to use. And then Loctite is best applied to the female threads. So wherever you're going to do it, if you can put it on the female threads, put it on the female threads. So just a tiny little drop. Put in your female thread. Tiny little drop. Female thread. And that's enough. That's it. So I'll go ahead and assemble this knife. I have a assembly disassembly video if you want to follow along with that. Okay, lubrication. I like nano oil. I know everybody's got different oils that they like. I like nano oil. The only thing I don't like about nano oil is these little plastic tubes that they come in crack. So I always wrap them in duct tape. That keeps that from happening. So with nano oil, you got the thick and the thin, the blue and the red. So I use this for the detent ball and this for the bearings. So another issue that I see is people just think more oil better, and they slather this stuff in oil. But the problem with that is oil attracts dust clings to oil. So the more oil you put, you know, the dirtier your knife's going to be. You just need 1 drop. I put 1 drop on 1 ball, and I put 1 drop where there's going to be metal to metal contact. Same thing on this bearing. 1 drop on 1 ball, and it'll smear itself all around when you start using a knife. Now for the detent, another problem that I always see is if people start getting bad action, it's because you're rubbing a dry ceramic ball on a dry knife. So I get the thick, and I make 1 little drop. Sometimes you gotta wipe it if you get an air bubble. 1 little drop on the tip, and just put it in your detent hole. Oop, that was too much. You get too much, swipe off. That's it. That's all the oil you need. So now we'll go to these. Get your clean toothpick, purple. Make sure it's nice and mixed up. Tiny little drop. Tiny little drop. You see that? There's no squeeze out. I don't have Loctite going places where Loctite shouldn't be. Still too much oil. All right, and I already put Loctite in these screws. And then pocket clips. Pocket clips always seem to be the thing that comes loose for me. So sometimes on my personal knives, I'll even put blue Loctite on the pocket clip. But we're gonna do purple since this is not my knife. All right, so check it, make sure everything's good. Flick it a couple times, let the oil go all around the bearings and get on the detent track. But don't play with it too much because you need the Loctite needs time to dry. So just go set it aside for an hour or two before you start using it, playing with it. And that's how you Loctite and lube a knife properly. Love y'all, bye.